Thank you, thank you. Quick wardrobe change. I gave into the tie in the end, and here I am. Prynhawn da, Cynhadleth. I'm getting better. Good afternoon, conference. It's a huge pleasure to be here speaking on behalf of UKIP spokesman on energy and industry, Roger Helmer. Roger, as Steve has said, wasn't able to make this speech this afternoon, so has asked me to read it to you on his behalf. This event in Llandudno could be the most important conference in our party's history. At last, we're facing the ultimate test, a referendum on our EU membership. And every one of us in this hall can claim part of the credit. If David Cameron had not been running scared of UKIP, he would never have offered this referendum in the first place. And in fact, had he have known how events were set to unfold, perhaps he would never have offered it at all.
He might have resigned.
Wouldn't we be so lucky? But already the shape of the campaign is emerging. Nigel referred earlier to the Romanians. Well, Roger likes to call them the staymongerers. Those people, led by our Prime Minister, have already launched Project Fear, the nightmare on Downing Street. And if it hasn't hit you already, it'll be coming to a street near you very soon. Yet again, they're recycling the 3.5 million jobs myth, which is quite simply a lie. They know, or ought to know, that it's just untrue. It's based on a year 2000 report from the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. That report said that 3.5 million jobs depended on trade with the EU. It went on then quite specifically to state that there was no prima facie reason why that trade would stop if we left the EU. In fact, we know it won't stop for at least 3 reasons. First, because WTO rules prohibit punitive trade measures. Second, because the Lisbon Treaty provides that the EU will seek to establish favourable trading relations with neighbouring countries. But third, and most importantly, because EU and UK trade is an economic necessity. We actually buy £60 billion more per year from the continent than they buy from us. They need us. If 3.5 million jobs in the UK depend on UK-EU trade, then 5 or 6 million EU jobs depend on exports to the UK. When we believe, and we believe it's now when and not if, we become the rump EU's largest export market, bar none, bigger than the USA or any other country. So the trade will continue, and those 3.5 million jobs are secure. But of course, we have to be honest, because we believe in being honest in UKIP, and there will be job losses in the UK when we leave. And we can tell you how many. 74. I'm sure you don't need me to explain, but that's the 73 MEPs and 1 commissioner. And we're going to be happy to say goodbye to every single one of them. So when Project Fear starts on the 3.5 million jobs riff, you can tell them that they're wrong. And then we'll ask them about the jobs we're losing now because of EU policies. Sadly, the examples of this are plenty. But why have we seen these recent steel closures and job losses? There are 3 key reasons. Higher energy prices, the Chinese dumping steel on world markets, and our government's inability to offer even temporary help to get the industry over a bad patch. And each of these 3 reasons is a direct responsibility of Brussels and our EU membership, especially the energy problem. EU policy and the Large Combustion Plant Directive is requiring the closure of perfectly viable coal-fired power plants. Cheap, reliable generation is being replaced with intermittent, unreliable renewables, and especially with our old friends, the windmills. In the last few years, we've seen half a dozen power stations closed for no other reason than the EU's renewable obsession. This Tory government recently announced an end to new subsidised onshore wind projects. The wind industry was immediately up in arms and insisted it couldn't manage without subsidies, which is odd, given that they've already claimed to have achieved grid parity, meaning they should be able to operate commercially without subsidy. Now we read recent reports say that the government is looking at rebranding subsidies under a different name, although that's another story. The result is that any energy-intensive industries in Britain and across the EU are closing and relocating, often to adjacent countries like Turkey or Ukraine or North Africa, or to China or India. We're driving these industries abroad, taking their jobs and their investment with them. We've talked about this problem at previous conferences, but let me just remind you of the industries involved. It's not just steel, it's aluminium and chemicals and fertilizers and petroleum refining and glass and ceramics and cement. Europe has lost nearly 500,000 direct and indirect jobs over the last 7 or 8 years. And if we go on like this, we can anticipate similar job losses by 2021. Let's tell the Romanians it's the jobs and the investment we're losing today as a result of EU policies that we need to be talking about. The EU talks about promoting manufacturing, about increasing manufacturing as a share of GDP to 20%. Yet its policies drive manufacturing operations away. There's a bitter irony here. These energy-intensive industries are going to foreign jurisdictions which generally have lower emissions standards. There's actually a UK government report stating that imported refined petroleum products involve 35% higher emissions than for refining in the EU. This policy is self-defeating in its own terms. We're supposed to be cutting emissions, but all we're doing is exporting them and increasing them. And bear in mind that a ton of CO2 in Kiev or Karachi has just the same impact on the environment as the same ton in Cologne or Kettering. Meantime, our UK-EU energy policies are not merely forcing up prices, they're undermining our energy security. A recent report from the Institute of Mechanical Engineers says that by 2025, we could be looking at a generating shortfall of between 40 and 55%. That's a massive problem, and neither Brussels nor Westminster has a solution. Indeed, they seem scarcely aware of it. And yet they go on subsidising and promoting electric vehicles without the faintest idea where the additional electricity to power them might come from. Let me tell you what UKIP would do. Outside the EU, we can dramatically cut energy prices by stopping the green taxes and subsidies that lead to vast misallocation of resources on inefficient renewables. Outside the EU, we will cut energy prices for households and pensioners, whilst exploiting low-cost, reliable energy sources like coal, gas, and nuclear. Outside the EU, we will restore industrial competitiveness and prevent further energy-driven job losses. Outside the EU, we will ensure energy security, currently under threat, by keeping existing plants due for closure under the LCPD and building new, clean coal plants. And we will scrap the EU emissions target and repeal the Climate Change Act 2008. We would be able to seek cross-party agreement in Westminster for regulatory continuity, which we desperately need to facilitate investment in long-term energy infrastructure development. Cameron likes to call Brexit a leap into the unknown. Well, what he doesn't realise is that in UKIP we ventured into the unknown before. We've broken down barriers and achieved things which are unprecedented for a new party. Collectively, we've brought about more change in the political narrative over 23 years than we could have ever dreamed. We in UKIP know exactly how to solve the UK's energy challenges after independence. The real unknown is venturing into a future consumed within the follies of the EU energy policies and how much damage they will do if we stay in. Our country needs us. The unwritten future of our children and grandchildren depends on us seizing the moment that so many of us have worked so hard to bring about. Brexit means more jobs, more prosperity, lower energy prices, and energy security. More than that, it means independence and freedom for us and our children. This, ladies and gentlemen, is our moment to shine, and we will not let our country down as we commit ourselves to claiming it back. Thank you.